We'll call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Shannon Blaze.
Present.
Rebecca Bird. Tim Dearmeyer. Andy Weason.
Present.
Corey Johnson. Tyler Rasmussen.
Here.
Justin Stingle.
Here.
Okay, so second item on the agenda, discuss and consider intent for sharing services related to fire protection agreement. Be looking for a motion to start that discussion.
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider intent for sharing services related to fire protection agreement.
Okay, did I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to discuss and consider intent for sharing services related to fire protection agreement. All those in favor say aye. Aye, okay. So, for the board members and the public, this discussion just involves agreements going forward with our fire and EMS. This is not in any shape or form related to the current contract with Black Creek Rescue Service that will not be discussed tonight. So this is just related to agenda items. I did not put public comment on this. If the public has any questions, you're welcome to speak to me or the other trustees, and Jenny and Nathan would most likely be available for questions after the meeting. So, little background, starting late last year, myself and a couple other community leaders started discussions with the future of our fire and EMS. As many people know, we've had some issues. The current rural fire committee the way it's organized is outdated, and we're looking to take the next steps to correct that. So recently, myself and other municipal leaders, Nichols, Town of Cicero, Town of Black Creek, we got together along with Jenny Court. Dan Knudsen and Jenny Court had reached out to a consultant to start working on this process for the future of our fire and EMS. Part of that is the possibility of getting an innovation grant, which essentially is free money that the municipalities could get along with making these agreements and forming these districts. So that's the meat of what we're gonna be talking about here. Jenny had come up with using templates that are readily available with a couple agreements. The fire agreement is the one we're gonna discuss right now. I asked Jenny and Nathan to be here. They better be able to answer any particulars regarding the agreements. But with that, though, you know, allow other trustees to partake in the discussion. So, anybody has any questions?
Can you explain this to me like I'm a 2-year-old, what this means?
Sure. So, in front of you, I put two agreements. One is for fire, one is strictly for EMS. The fire one is gonna be shared with the town. The EMS is gonna be shared with Cicero, the town of Black Creek, and Nichols, and of course, the village. These documents in front of you are nothing but the intent to create a board, saying that you want to be part of, you know, the next board, however it is going to be established. This gets you a seat at the table. We don't have bylaws, we don't have rules. This is just finding out who are our players that we need to come to the table and create this board and the rules that are gonna be for governing that board. While we're doing this, creating a new board will also make us eligible for the innovation grant. That innovation grant is going to allow us 25% of our expenses this year to be paid out for the next 4 years. So, there are numbers on these from 2025, because we can't consider the total of 2026 yet. But if we do 15% over those 4 years, we're looking at close to $100,000 per year, what we're projecting this year will be. We're hoping to have this new board up and ready to go for transfer of services by January 1. There's lots that needs to go into this. There's new federal ID numbers, NPI numbers. It is going to take months to establish, not to mention also the board creating the bylaws and procedures that it will need to follow. Is that? And intermunicipal agreements will also be part of establishment of that board.
So virtually this will take over the rural fire committee?
Yes, yes. Rural Fire Committee right now, the bylaws are, they need to be so revamped, it's almost, it's gonna be recreating rural fire. So we're gonna recreate a board to take the place of rural fire, same players, just a new board that is more legitimized. There's no obligation, you can back out at any time. Also with this grant, if for some reason, so the biggest catch with this grant is we can't exceed 115% of the prior year's budget. If we do, we're just not eligible for that payment of the grant for that year. So if we follow the grant, we get to year 3 and oh my gosh, something happens, our budget increases dramatically, we would just not be eligible for that year. No repayment of past years is gonna come into play.
The grant is guaranteed?
Well, I don't know if any grant is guaranteed, but we have nothing to lose. Rural fire needs to get revamped regardless. And according to the EMS Association director that I've spoken to and the consultant, we would absolutely qualify for this grant. So they have $300 million in the bucket for this grant over a 5-year period. We'll be eligible for 4 years, but only 19 organizations out of the thousands have applied for it. They're roughly at $1 million out of the $300 million that they have.
Is there a cost to apply for this grant?
No, there is not.
The, further though on that cost, there's not a cost to apply for it. If we're awarded the grant, if we're working with a consultant, which is one option, that consultant will of course charge a fee for their work in putting together the paperwork and assisting with that grant and making themselves available for the next 4 years. Typically, the one consultant that we've been discussing with, it would be a percentage of the grant award, is kind of how he gets his fee over the 4 years. So there's nothing up front, and there's not necessarily a separate budget item that would have to be. It would be a percentage of what he gets us in that grant.
Does it come out of those grant funds then?
It would.
We would have to pay him out of those grant
I
funds.
just wanna make sure it could come out of those.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes,
it can't.
yeah, there's no restriction as far as using those funds as long as it's to fire or EMS.
Okay, is there any more discussion, any more questions?
What are the costs involved in reorganizing, refiling for numbers, anything like that?
No, there should not be a cost for something like that. Federal ID numbers you can pull from the state within a matter of a couple hours.
Except if we have something to do it, or if it was,
Yep, nope. The only cost would be whatever we're gonna use the consultant for. The EMS Association also reached out and offered to help, which should reduce, if not partially eliminate the cost of the consultant as well. As we get more into that, I'll get a better feel of what the EMS Association can do versus what the consultant can do. But right now, we're under no contract with any consultant or obligation to anyone.
You said this is an intent, just an intent to have a discussion, but this says the length of a agreement is for 5 years.
To be on the board, yes.
So we're supposed to agree to be on the board before we know what any of the,
The intent to create the board, yes.
so.
So
I don't
if-
see any provision to back out if later things are not amenable. Right, like right now, the board is comprised, we know who's on the board.
Mhm.
I would like to see that kind of information. Cause this doesn't say it's just to have the conversation, it says that you agree to create a fire district. It doesn't really match where you said there's no obligation, that sounds like an obligation.
I think the intent to have in this agreement is that the municipalities agree to work together to get the ball rolling for reorganizing rural fire. And also by doing so, we can apply for the grant.
I mean,
That's the main intent of this. With, you know, in my opinion, we need to reorganize rural fire and, make things better.
I just think it's not a good idea to sign a 5-year contract when you don't know any of the details. Like, I have this that tells us what should all be documented for the creation of a fire protection district. I'd hate to agree to joining a district for 5 years that all of a sudden nobody likes. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand, but, that's where the consultant and, powers like to be that will help us organize it in a shape and form that we would be satisfied with it.
There. Well, on this one, just for example, because there's more, there's 4 municipalities. What happens if the 4 municipalities?
That's just EMS.
Okay.
We're just discussing fire.
So what if the municipalities don't agree?
Guess that's something we'll deal with. I don't anticipate there being an issue. We have well over, 100 years of working together with the town of Black Creek, with the fire department. It's in everybody's best interest to keep working together. You know, if for some reason, and it's happened locally, where 2 towns decide to break apart on a fire department or what have you, and it gets quite ugly, and it usually involves one side or the other having to pay out for the investments in equipment, buildings, equipment. That could get real ugly if for some reason the town and village of Black Creek, didn't get along.
I'll also let you know that every other municipality has had their meeting and signed the agreement.
Any more discussion? Any more discussion?
So, yeah, one more question. So this says in conjunction with the grant.
Mm-hmm.
So does this agreement dissolve if you don't get the grant?
You could. So this allows that newly formed board to apply for that grant. If you don't get the grant, or there's not dollars, I would take that as this agreement is specific to the grant. What this agreement really truly allows is for that board to be created, and then that board to work through, because all four municipalities, well, sorry, on the fire side of it, the two municipalities, this is your intent to pursue. You as municipalities would then have to work through the process, through the 660301 intermunicipal agreements, and actually create an intermunicipal agreement between the village and the town of Black Creek in order to move forward. And within that intermunicipal agreement, that's where you guys would truly set up how a committee or how a board would run, who presides over it. The dissolution clauses should be within that intermunicipal agreement as far as if the municipalities break up, who gets asset, how assets are distributed. That would be all determined as part of that. By moving forward with this agreement, the next step then with the consultant or with the association president is to start to work through with their templates, the intermunicipal agreements that would be put in place on the background to allow all of this to function and happen.
Okay, any more discussion? If there's no more discussion, I'll be looking for a motion to approve sharing services related to the fire protection agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement between the village and town for sharing services related to fire protection in conjunction with the Wisconsin State Innovation Grant.
And I have a motion made, do I have a second? I have a motion made and seconded to I don't
Approve the agreement between the village of Black Creek and the town of Black Creek for sharing services related to the fire protection in conjunction with the Wisconsin State Innovation Grant.
Okay. I have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And we have a voice vote, majority rules. Or do we do? Okay, item number 2, or 3, excuse me. Discuss and consider intent for sharing services related to emergency medical services. Looking for a motion for that discussion.
I make a motion to discuss and consider intent for sharing services related to emergency medical services.
I have a motion made, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead.
I have a motion made and seconded to discuss and consider intent for sharing services related to emergency medical services. So essentially the same type of agreement except for EMS, and it also involves not only the town of Black Creek, the town of Cicero and village of Nichols. Here again, this would get the ball rolling for essentially an EMS district between the four municipalities. There'll be agreements made, municipal service agreements and so forth, and each municipality would have, folks on the board that forms out of this agreement, and of course the details will be figured out. So is there any discussion?
So there will be 2 separate boards?
2 separate boards. The difference with this board is that we would be inviting Cicero and Nichols.
Okay, is there any more discussion?
same type of grant dollar wise?
EMS would be considerably more, just because our labor hours, even though we're getting paid $3 an hour, the grant considers that, the cost of those labor hours at prevailing wage, so it would be a considerable amount of money.
Looks like same percentage, right?
Yes,
Just,
yes. It would still be 25% of the budget and labor costs.
Like I said earlier, myself and the other municipal leaders met, it was a good discussion, and the other three municipalities appeared to be willing to work with us moving forward. And, apparently they've all met and have already approved an agreement. Is there any other discussion? Any more discussion? Okay, if there's no more discussion, I'll be looking for a motion to approve said sharing services agreement related to emergency medical services.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreements to the Village of Black Creek, Town of Black Creek, Town of Cicero, and Village of Nichols for sharing services related to emergency medical services in conjunction with the Wisconsin State Innovation Grant.
I have a motion made, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion made and seconded, and if you wouldn't mind saying the verbiage again, Justin.
Yep. Approve the agreement between the Village of Black Creek, Town of Black Creek, Town of Cicero, and the Village of Nichols for sharing services related to the emergency medical services in conjunction with the Wisconsin State Innovation Grant.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion made and seconded, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? Voice vote majority, vote for the motion. With that, our agenda items are done, and this meeting is adjourned. Anybody has any questions? Welcome to Corral Appropriate Individual.